Welcome to round 3 of Reread, Rewrite, or Burn. If you've watched my other videos, you'll know how this goes. I pick 3 out, I decide whether I'm going to reread them, rewrite them, or burn them. There are 30 books in here, which are the recent 30 that I've read following my last one, and then every 30 books I'll just do another one. So let's just get straight into it, and I'm excited. Apparently I passed the 30 book mark a while ago, and I didn't know. The Apartment by K.L. Slater. City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. Breakfast at Kutsoris by Bill Rogers. So The Apartment is about a woman who is taking care of her young child. She is desperate for a place to live. Someone approaches her and offers her apartment for an extremely low price. She takes it, and then things start getting a little weird. City of Glass is the first book in the Mortal Instruments series. Can't really go on too much about it because it'll give away too much of previous books, but basically it is the third installment. Breakfast at Kutsoris is a collection of short stories. So I feel sad about saying it, but first off, I would burn Breakfast at Kutsoris just because I preferred it less to the others, I would think. Also, it's very hard for me to rewrite short story collections. I would rewrite The Apartment because I think it was good. It had a very good concept. It had an idea that I loved because it was very much based around psychology, but it wasn't connected very well. The psychological part of it wasn't connected to the rest of the story, and if I could rewrite it, I'd make it a bit more cohesive. And that would mean I would reread City of Glass because it was actually my favourite of the Mortal Instruments books and I really enjoyed it. Okay, next. First one. Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. Second one, Invisible Girl by Lisa Jewell. Third one is Zoo by James Patterson. So Clockwork Angel is the first in the Infernal Devices series, and it's based in the 1800s, and it follows a girl called Tessa and 2 young men who are shadow hunters. Invisible Girl is a book about a young girl that goes missing, and everyone automatically assumes it is the weird guy on the street because apparently he is just that type, and the story looks into someone who is the type versus who is not the type and could potentially have done it. Zoo is a sci-fi book based around animals taking over the world and killing humans for unknown reasons, which then become apparent in the book. So straight away, I think it'd be obvious I would burn Zoo. Anyone that has watched my wrap-up or any sort of time where I mentioned this, I hated it. It was just really badly written, and it got made into a TV series, and that was really good, so I expected a lot more from it than I actually got. These two are really hard. I don't know which one I would rewrite or reread. I'm going to rewrite Invisible Girl. I don't think there was much issue with it. I feel as though, I didn't find any issue with it. I just felt as though there was a couple of bits where it kind of wavered and my interest in it peaked and valid. I'm going to rewrite Invisible Girl. This is a very difficult decision. I don't really know why I want to do this. I just didn't like it as much as Clockwork Angel. I don't know how I'd rewrite it. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 parts in it where I felt as though the pacing dropped a little bit, and I'd maybe just try and increase the pacing and make it a much more fluent story. I don't know. A decent story. It was very good as it was, so it's very hard to rewrite this. Obviously, that means I would reread Clockwork Angel. Round 3. Room 119 by T.F. Lynce. The Mating Season by Laurie Horowitz. And A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Room 119 is a story about a man called Dean who is a stock trader, and one day he makes a mistake and loses his job, and his life kind of goes downhill. Then someone approaches him and says, go to this hotel, ask for room 119, they know how to deal with people like you. And the story just follows from there. The Mating Season is a story about a bird nerd and a film director who are forced to work together to create a documentary. Initially, they don't like each other, but it's a romance. Fine. A Court of Thorn and Roses. A Court of Thorn and Roses is a fantasy book about a girl called Feyre who, whilst out hunting, murders a member of the Fae and is given a choice to die right now or go and spend the rest of her days living in that kingdom. And she chooses to go and live in that kingdom. So, fairly clear to say, I would burn The Mating Season. It was a romance about a bird watcher and a film director Very boring. Not the worst romance I've read. It was okay. I give it a 3-star rating, but not my kind of thing, so bye. This is hard. Room 119 or Akatar? I really, really liked Akatar. I think I'm going to base this on the ratings I gave it. I gave A Court of Thorn and Roses a 4-star, so I'm going to say I would rewrite this one. I don't really know how I'd rewrite it. I'd make it a little easier maybe for non-fantasy readers to get into it, because it did take me a while to get into it. Once I was into it, I was absolutely fine. But yeah, maybe I'd just do that. Make it a teeny tiny bit easier for me to get into it, because I felt as though it was really good, but I wasn't too into fantasy at that time, so there was a bit where I felt hesitant to enjoy it. But that's my own thing. Really, I loved it. I wouldn't want to rewrite it. This is really difficult. And Room 119, because in my head, that was perfection. I loved it so much. When I Was 10 by Fiona Cummins. Final Assignment by Linwood Barclay. And No Account Even by Simon James Green. This one's really hard because I loved all of these books. I would say I would burn Final Assignment just because it was only 70 pages and I'm just like, you know, it didn't need to be told. If it did, it could have been told in a longer story. I would rewrite When I Was 10 because I know I specifically said I was disappointed in this ending because I felt as though the ending was just kind of rushed and I didn't really get to fully enjoy it, whereas the rest of the story was really, really good. So I'd rewrite that, write a better, more cohesive ending. Obviously would reread No Account Even because in my head that book was sheer perfection. Idle Hands by Cassandra Windwalker. X by Jack Croxall. Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. So, Idle Hands is about a woman who has made the decision to leave her husband and take her kids with her, and it also follows the devil. It's a girl called Ella who says she's been called many names, one of which is probably the most uninventive, and it is the devil. And it's about choices you make and being guided by fate, but still having that choice to make the decision on where your life is going to lead, and sometimes realizing you made the wrong choice. X is a story about a girl who is hidden in a shed because there are creatures trying to get in to kill her, and she decides now is a great time to start a diary and write about her experience. It's a very short story, it's only 30 pages long. Queenie is a story about a young black girl living in London who has to deal with everyday racism and try and navigate her way through her life whilst suffering through a breakup and going through a really difficult time. Straight off the bat, I'd burn X. I didn't really enjoy it as much. I felt as though if you are writing a short story, you need to work really hard to make us love the character in such a short period of time. I don't think this book did that. I would reread Idle Hands because I absolutely loved it. I wouldn't really change that much. It was an absolute 5-star. It shocked me that it was a 5-star because I don't know why, I just didn't expect it. And it's become one of my favourite books of last month. And that would mean I would rewrite Queenie because as much as I enjoyed it, I didn't like the character of Queenie. I felt as though she got herself into a lot of situations and then played the victim. A lot of the times she was the victim. She was clearly the victim and it was awful. The way she was treated by so many people was horrible. But there's always one particular bit that sticks out and it really annoys me. She got into trouble at work and then was like, oh, I can't believe my boss is treating me like this. But she left work in the middle of the day to go to an unnecessary appointment. And she just opted to do that. No care whatsoever. And then when her boss called her out on it and said, excuse me, that's wrong, she was saying how bad her life was. But she did have a really bad life, to be fair. But there was just some things that made her not that likeable of a character, and I just want to make her more likeable in my head. Stranger in the Lake by Kimberly Bell. Noah Could Never by Simon James Green. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. So Stranger in the Lake follows a woman who finds out she's pregnant, then she sees her husband talking to a stranger, goes home, the next morning she finds that stranger dead in the lake under her dock. And the husband, his first wife, was also found dead under the dock, drowned in the lake. And suspicion suddenly gets thrown on him, saying, is he responsible for this? And it starts questioning whether she can really trust him. Noah Could Never is the sequel to Noah Can't Even, and it follows Noah after the events of the first book. I can't really give too much away about that, because I don't want to ruin the first book. And The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse is just a beautiful short story about so much. It's about mental health, it is about friendship, it is about love and caring for each other. It's a really lovely book filled with some amazing quotes and illustrations. Now, I honestly think this is the hardest one. I'm going to reread Noah Could Never, because I absolutely loved it. I really did. It was very much on par with book one, and in my head, sequels don't typically do that, but it did, and I loved it, so I have to reread this. I'm sorry. Which means between these two, I think I'd have to burn The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse, just for the reason that that's not something you could rewrite. Like, that book was perfection as it was. I couldn't rewrite it. If I can't reread it, I have to burn it, because you can't rewrite it. It was perfect. Which means I would rewrite Stranger in the Lake, because I felt as though the ending was a bit predictable, and I don't like predictable endings. Next three. You've Been Warned by James Patterson. Zoo 2 by James Patterson. The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. You've Been Warned is a story about a woman who is taking care of young children, but she's also having an affair with the father of the young children. Suddenly she starts getting loads of warnings telling her to stay out of it and leave, and she realises that eventually the warnings will run out. Zoo 2 is the sequel to Zoo, and it follows on from the events of the first book. Again, can't really give too much away. The 10,000 Doors of January follows a young girl called January who starts reading a journal that takes her on a story of her parents' life, and yeah, it's just a cute little story, really. So anyone that has seen my Alphabathon wrap-up will know You've Been Warned has to be reread, because I loved it. It was such a shock. I didn't expect what I got from it. It was amazing. So 100% would reread. I think I would burn the 10,000 Doors of January, because I just really did not enjoy it. I really, really hated it. I didn't like this either. I didn't like Zoo 2. I hated both of them. I would burn them both. But if I had to choose, Zoo 2 was better than Zoo 1. And I think as though... No, I don't know. This is... I'm just going to say I'd rewrite Zoo 2. I don't know what I'd do with it, because it was crap. And 10,000 Doors of January I really didn't like, and I didn't... No. I'd burn them both, but I'll burn 10,000 Doors. Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. Dead Heat by James Patterson. The Pale Horse by Agatha Christie. So Everything Everything is a story about a young girl who is allergic to everything. She's confined to her house because if she goes outside, the air will kill her. And she ends up falling in love with her next door neighbour. So Dead Heat is set during the Olympics, and it is about an athlete going missing the day before, and the police are questioning where he went. Then he turns up at the opening ceremony and tries to murder the leader of that country. And suddenly everyone's starting to question what happened to him while he was missing that has made him try to kill somebody. The Pale Horse is about a woman dying, but before she does, she gives a list of names to a reverend. Then the reverend gets murdered. And it's about trying to find the connection to all of these people on the list, because suddenly everyone on that list is either dead or is dying. I think easy peasy lemon squeeze there for me. I'd burn The Pale Horse. It was not my favourite Agatha Christie. I haven't read many Agatha Christie, if I'm honest. I've only read that one and Then There Were None. I hope to be reading more, but I just didn't like it at all. Didn't connect with it. I just took a lot of issue. I would then... See, in my head I'm thinking rewrite Everything Everything, But the only reason I'm thinking that is because I watched the movie of this before I read the book. And in my head, the book was absolutely amazing. I loved it. Absolute 5-star. But it was so similar to the film because they didn't really change anything that I felt as though I'd seen it before. And it kind of took a bit of my enjoyment away. So I wouldn't want to rewrite the book. I just kind of wish I'd done it in the other order. But I think that's just how I'm feeling right now. That's what I'd rather do. And that means I would reread Dead Heat because I actually really enjoyed that story. It was only like 140 pages and it got so much character development, it got so much plot, it got all of that in such a short amount of time. And books that short can't usually do that, and it was really good. Next is Unbelievably Boring Bart by James Patterson. Keeper of the Bride by Tess Gerritsen. And Judge and Jury by James Patterson. So, Unbelievably Boring Bart is a middle grade about a young lad called Bart who invents an app where people can fight aliens and save the town. It's kind of like Pokemon Go. It's an interactive app where people have to go outside. And he has spent his life being bullied, and he decides to use this app to his advantage and maybe torment his bullies a bit. Keeper of the Bride is a thriller romance book about a woman who is due to get married, but she gets stood up at the altar and basically the church then explodes, meaning if she was getting married, she would have been in there and she would have died. Judge and Jury is a story about a woman that doesn't want to be on the jury, but she is forced to be, and then the criminal who is on trial ends up making a devastating move that ruins the life of the jury members, and it's about this person determined to hunt down the criminal. I think of all of these, I'd burn Unbelievably Boring Bart. I think that's just the one I enjoyed the least. So sadly, I think that's the one that just has to go. No issue with it, really. I just thought it was only okay. I know for a fact I would rewrite Keeper of the Bride because I really enjoyed it, but I felt as though the reason why this woman was being targeted was a little lackluster. I thought it was quite boring, to be honest. I expected a lot more, and it just seemed very, very pedestrian of a way to go, and I was very disappointed with it. And I would reread Judge and Jury because I thought it was actually a really good story. I think I gave it 4.5 out of 5-star rating, so obviously a very good book. Okay, final round. The Escape Room by Megan Goldin. Learning to Ride by Erin Knightley. The Hostage by James Patterson. So The Escape Room is a story about 4 people who find themselves locked in an elevator during a mandatory meeting. And the story follows flashbacks to finding out something that they have all been a part of, leading up to them getting stuck in the elevator. Learning to Ride is a romance about a woman that moves from New York to a town where there are cowboys, and she ends up sleeping with a guy who is known for just sleeping with women once and forgetting about them, but they then realise that they can't just have one night together. They want to spend the rest of their lives together. The Hostage is a story of a security manager who works for a hotel franchise. The hotel is about to have its big opening night, and suddenly a madman murders the owner of the hotel and takes people hostage. Easy, burn Learning to Ride. It were crap. Bye. I think I took issue with this. I would rewrite The Hostage just because I liked it, but I felt as though the reveal at the end was very disappointing, and I hold thrillers to a very high standard. If it's disappointing, I'm not happy with it. So I kind of rewrite this and make it a better, more thrilling ending. Which means I'd reread The Escape Room, which is true, because I really enjoyed The Escape Room. The only thing that annoyed me about this is it's not an escape room. They get stuck in an elevator, not an escape room. And that is it for round 3 of Reread, Rewrite or Burn. I will be back once I've read 30 more books. I thought that was okay. I've realised how many good books I've read this month, because it was actually quite difficult. I've read some very bad books, but I have read some really good ones, and I'm really happy with that. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Make sure you give me a thumbs up and make sure you leave me a comment down below because I love chatting to people in the comments. Other than that, thank you so much for subscribing. I post every Monday, Wednesday and Saturday and then randomly throughout the week. And I will see you guys in the next video.